Hey ladies and gents, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for coming back. Today, you're in for a treat because it's the start of a brand new series on my channel, the Alphabetical Reviews. So for this series, I take a film that starts with A, then B, then C, etc, etc, then review it and talk about it. And today, we're starting with Best Picture winning, one of my favourite films, American Beauty. But before we get into that, ladies and gents, please remember to like, comment and subscribe, and if you're feeling extra generous, just to ding that little bell, and also scan these barcodes, go to links in the comments, or follow the names directly on your screens to follow my social medias. I think it's safe to say American Beauty is an extremely pre-9/11 film. To the point it literally explores this time in the 90s. I wasn't there, I wasn't even born, I was born in 2002, but it explores this time in the 90s where people, especially men, felt like their lives were too perfect, and like because of that they had everything they wanted, but they felt like they had nothing to show for it, and their lives were meaningless because of it. They were just living this typical perfect American life. Fight Club, which also came out this year, explored something extremely similar. This film takes a little bit differently. It explores masculinity like Fight Club does, but this film does it in a more meaningful way in terms of Kevin Spacey's character going through this phase where after he falls in love, or I wouldn't say falls in love actually, but he becomes sexually infatuated with his daughter's best friend. He starts to feel like he has to become more of a man and starts working out and doing drugs and ignoring his wife and becoming aggressive, throwing things in the house. And that's where I think American Beauty really shines. It shows what happens when you ignore people and you make people feel like they're not wanted, and what it mentally does to them. And after a while, when they get fed up, they revolt, and the consequences to family can be horrendous. I think with all this, I should talk about Kevin Spacey's performance. This film had already not dated great with what its message, because obviously 2 years later we had the Twin Tower attacks, which completely changed the attitude of people basically forever. My mum calls it the end of an era, because it kind of stopped this phase where everyone was just kind of happy to get on their life to like pure misery. But it was also not aged well, because of Kevin Spacey's got these not so nice accusations made towards him, and this film does follow him as he sexually pursues a girl who may or may not be underage. But nonetheless, forgetting both of those things, Kevin Spacey is Oscar worthy in this film, and he deserved the Oscar. He's fantastic in American Beauty, and he just captures that feeling that so many men have of feeling like they're not good enough and like they're a disappointment to the world, and really shows how terrible toxic masculinity can be. That's not overshadows Annette Bening's equally amazing performance as Carolyn Burnham, as his wife. She plays a woman who's going through the same struggles as him, but in a different way. She kind of lives the perfect life that every person in America would have. She kind of like pursues like the American dream for a woman, and because of that she finds herself just desperately unhappy and feels like her life's going nowhere, and her job's just a waste of space, and like her marriage is dead, and that her life is just a ticking bomb and she's waiting to just be put off as herself. And her and Kevin Spacey both in the film are just the best things. They are incredible. Their performances still remember today. Hilary Swank is amazing in Boys Don't Cry, but I would argue that maybe she deserved the Oscar over her, especially now that Hilary Swank won too. It would have been so nice to see Annette Bening win. I mean, obviously, I wasn't alive, but it would just be so nice to know Annette Bening is an Oscar winner because of how much of a great established actor she is now and how respected she is. Flora Birch, Wes Bentley, and Mina Suvari as the three young performances in this film all completely steal the show. This is a particularly brave role for Flora Birch and Mina Suvari to take, especially Flora Birch, because they were both young and they were playing these very sexual characters who have to do some stuff in the film which was and still is very controversial, and for them to kind of put themselves in that at the age they were and really take a gamble, because American Beauty is one of those films you read the screenplay and you're like, this could be really great or really shit. It has to be made just right. And honestly, for that reason, they were so young in their careers, and this was such a risky role. Good for them taking it, and it really, well, I would say worked out for them. But the big shame is, especially for Birch, these performances didn't seem to help them much, because I see Wes Bentley pop up every once in a while. He was in Interstellar. He was briefly in the new Mission Impossible, but he doesn't do much. And neither does Flora Birch, neither does Mina Suvari. But still, nonetheless, that is a shame. They do really kill it in this film. Especially Mina Suvari. If you can hear cats, my bloody cats are outside and they want to come in. You can wait. Alright, okay. Peter Gallagher and Allison Jenny are also in this film as smaller characters. Especially Allison Jenny. She's barely in it. Wow. And especially of how far she's come in her career. She's an Oscar winner now. To think this as smaller role she was given, the fact that she has elevated what she has, good for her. And it's a shame you don't get to see more from character, because her character is actually quite an interesting character. This woman who, from years of abuse and being with this man who's so toxic, her life, more than Annette Bening's, has just come to nothing, and it's a real tragic story that many women will relate to. But the real standout in this film, in my opinion, and one of the most underrated performances of all time, completely snubbed for an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor, Chris Cooper is fucking amazing in this film. He is the definition of what happens when you let a man get out of control and just let them boast about their masculinity and how tough they think they are, and just how aggressive and how vile of human beings it makes them in the end. But yeah, Chris Cooper kills it, and I'm glad he got to win his Oscar just a few years later for adaptation, but it's a real shame you couldn't get in, because I'd say his is the second best next to Kevin Spacey. He really does a great job. Sam Mendes directed this film, and it's kind of incredible that he did. He did win the Oscar for Best Director, and this was his directorial debut, which is kind of amazing when you think about it, because this film is very competently directed, and unlike other directorial debuts where a film doesn't seem to have much of a style or feel go for it, this film does have this like kind of like warm, red, lusty feeling go for it. And I really commend him, because directing a film is hard, full stop, but he hadn't had much experience in film at all. He'd done a lot of theatre, and that's why he got this, because this is a very sentimental, meaningful film, and Steven Spielberg thought that he'd be best for that because he'd done theatre along the same lines as it. But still, hats off to you, mate. The score by Thomas Newman is one of the best things about this film. It's so relaxing. If you're ever looking for a film track to fall asleep to, American Beauty is the one for that. There is that classic theme that you hear all the time on classical radio. If you're not from the UK, you probably won't understand, but if you go on like BBC Radio 2, it'll be like every Sunday at like 5 to 6, it'll be like,
You have just heard the main theme from the classical Sam Mendes film 1999's American Beauty by Thomas Newman, composed by the London School of Orchestra.
it is an amazing score. So peaceful, so relaxing. And bearing in mind it was Thomas Newman did the score, and he's been nominated 15 times, it's kind of mental to think the man that did this score is still Oscar-less. I'm not trying to say that people who won over him didn't deserve it, but still, wow, Thomas Newman's going to get his Oscar. Next nominee, this is my bold prediction. You've got an exclusive here. Next time he's nominated, he's going to win. He's got to. If not, I'm going to eat my words. It'll be very embarrassing. I'd like to talk about the cinematography and the overall look of American Beauty. Oh, how can you not just love American Beauty for this? It has some of the best shots in film, full stop. The high school dance scene is one of my favourite scenes in films. The music, the dance routine, that slow dance, the lighting is amazing. The girl lying in the rose petals might be my favourite shot from a film. The way the camera is positioned throughout this whole film, it's like any frame from this film could be taken, you could put it on its wall, and someone come around your house and be like, oh, that's very nice, where's that from? Very very sentimental. And you'd be like, oh, it's just from American Beauty. And they'd be like, oh, all right. But yeah, and that was by the late Conrad Alhall, who won his second Oscar for this film, his first one since 1970, when he won for the 1969 film Kutch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids. So good job, Conrad Alhall. It's a shame you couldn't live forever, mate, because not only is it sad to lose life, but you were a great cinematographer, and it's nice to see that you got to win yet another Oscar after you died. I'm finally going to go on to the writing about this film, because even though American Beauty is one of my favourite films, I do have to balance out my own personal opinion with a more objective opinion. American Beauty is written beautifully. If you read it as a screenplay, it's not the best written screenplay in terms of it goes on a bit. There are bits in it that are unnecessary, and they did actually have to chop out a lot. But the overall story of this film, the dialogue, the sentiment of it, amazing. Brilliant. Some of the best written stuff. At the same time, and it bothers me to a point, American Beauty can be very pretentious at times. The main thing I'm talking about is the kid played by Wes Bentley, Ricky Fitz, if I remember rightly, and I definitely didn't just read that off my phone. He likes to record everything because he sees the beauty in everything. Every single time he's on screen with his camera, not necessarily at the start where he's seen just recording the girl, but whenever he's seen recording weird stuff like a dead bird or a plastic bag, I just think, mate, you're not impressing anybody. It makes me cringe a lot. It's almost like, it really lets you down because a film's got so much going for it, and then that happens and you're like, oh, shut up, mate. That's just not true, is it? A plastic bag in the wind is a plastic bag in the wind. And that's my main complaint with American Beauty. Beyond that, American Beauty, amazingly acted, sentimental, technical feat of a film that is a great, brave Best Picture winner that you wouldn't expect to happen every year. And balancing out my own personal opinion with the objectives, I'm going to give American Beauty a 9 out of 10. If you have access to Rakuten TV, they have it on there for free. I'd highly recommend the watch. Equally, you can buy the Blu-ray or rent it. Up to you, but I'd recommend you give American Beauty a watch if you haven't already. It is a great film to watch if you're a fan of cinema, you're an aspiring filmmaker, maybe even if you're an aspiring writer. But that's all I've got for today, folks. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Leave me your thoughts on American Beauty. Maybe even leave me a suggestion for the film I should cover, beginning with B in its title. I've got a few in mind, but if anyone has got anything better to recommend, I may do it. Who knows? But until we meet next time, ladies and gents, so long for now.